Frying Pan Alley and a Glimpse of Inferno by Jack London. The beasts they hunger and eat and die, and so do we in the world's sty. Swineherd have no remedy, say many men and hasten by. Sidney Lanier. 3 of us walked down Mile End Road, and one was a hero. He was a slender lad of 19, so slight and frail, in fact that, like Fra Lippo-Lippi, a puff of wind might double him up and turn him over. He was a burning young socialist, in the first throes of enthusiasm and ripe for martyrdom. As platform speaker or chairman, he had taken an active and dangerous part in the many indoor and outdoor pro-Boer meetings which have vexed the serenity of Merry England these several years back. Little items he had been imparting to me as he walked along, of being mobbed in parks and on tramcars, of climbing on the platform to lead the forlorn hope, and brother speaker after brother speaker had been dragged down by the angry crowd and cruelly beaten, of a siege in a church where he and 3 others had taken sanctuary, and where, amid flying missiles and the crashing of stained glass, they had fought, of a mob till rescued by platoons of constables, of pitched and giddy battles on stairways, galleries, and balconies, of smashed windows, collapsed stairways, wrecked lecture halls, and broken heads and bones, and then, with a regretful sigh, he looked at me and said, "How I envy you, big, strong man. I'm such a little mite, I can't do much when it comes to fighting." And I, walking ahead and shoulder above my 2 companions, remembered my own husky West and the stalwart man it had been my custom in turn to envy there. Also, as I looked at the mind of the youth with the heart of a lion, I thought, this is the type that on occasion rears barricades and shows the world that men have not forgotten how to die. But up spoke my other companion, a man of 28, who eked out a precarious existence in a sweating den. "I'm an arty man, I am," he announced. "Like the other chaps at my shop, I ain't. They consider me a fine specimen of manhood. But you know, I weighed 140 pounds. I was ashamed to tell him that I weighed 170, so I contented myself with taking his measure. Poor, misshapen little man, his skin an unhealthy color, body gnarled and twisted out of all decency, contrasted chest, shoulders bent prodigiously from long hours of toil, and head hanging heavily forward and out of place. A hearty man he was. How tall you are! 5'2", he answered proudly, and the chaps at the shop. "Let me see the shop," I said. The shop was idle just then, but I still desired to see it. Passing Lehman Street, we cut off to the left into Spitalfields and dived into Frying Pan Alley. A spawn of children cluttered the slimy pavement, for all the world like tadpoles just turned frogs on the bottom of a dry pond. In a narrow doorway, so narrow that perforce we stepped over her, sat a woman with a young babe nursing, at breasts grossly naked and libbling at the sacredness of motherhood. In the black and narrow hall behind her we waded through a mess of young life, and essayed an even narrower and fouler stairway. Up we went 3 flights, each landing 2 feet by 3 in area, and heaped with filth and refuse. There were 7 rooms in this abomination called a house. In 6 of the rooms 20-odd people, of both sexes and all ages, cooked, ate, slept, and worked. Inside the rooms averaged 8 feet by 8, or possibly 9. The 7th room we entered, it was the den in which 5 men sweated. It was 7 feet wide by 8 long, and the table at which the work was performed took up the major portion of the space. On this table were 5 lasts, and there was barely room for the men to stand to the work, for the rest of the space was heaped with cardboard, leather bundles of show uppers, and a miscellaneous assortment of materials used in attaching the uppers of shoes to their soles. In the adjoining room lived a woman and 6 children. In another vile hole lived a widow with an only son of 16 who was dying of consumption. The woman hawked sweetmeats on the street, I was told, and more often failed than not in supplying her son with the 3 quarts of milk he daily required. Further, the son, the weak and dying, did not taste meat oftener than once a week, and the kind and quality of his meat cannot possibly be imagined by people who have never watched human swine eat. "The way you caught is something terrible," volunteered my sweated friend, referring to the dying boy. "Where I'm air while we're working, and it's terrible," I said, "terrible." In order for calling on the sweetmeats, I found another menace added to the hostile environment of the children of the slum. My sweated friend, when work was to be had, joined with 4 other men in this 8 by 7 room. In winter a lamp burned nearly all the day and added its fumes to the overloaded air, which was breathed and breathed and breathed again. In good times, when there was a rush of work, this man told me that he could earn as high as 30 bob a week, 30 shillings, $7 and a half. But it's only the best of us can do it, he qualified. And when we work 12, 13 and 14 hours a day, just as fast as we can, you should see us sweat just running from us. If you could see us, it dazzles our eyes, takes flying out of mouth like from a machine. Look at my mouth. I looked. The teeth were worn down by constant friction of the metallic brads, while they were coal-black and rotten. I clean my teeth, he added, else they'd be worse. After he had told me that the workers had to furnish their own tools, brads, gingery, cardboard, rent lights and whatnot, it was plain that his 30 bob was a diminishing quantity. But how long does the rush season last in which you receive his high wage of 30 bob? I asked. 4 months was the answer. For the rest of the year, he informed me, they average from half a quid to be quid a week, which is equivalent to from $2 and a half to $5. The present week was half gone, and he had earned 4 bob or $1, and yet I was given to understand that this was one of the better grades of sweating. I looked out of the window, which should have commanded the backyards of neighboring buildings, but there were no backyards, or rather, they were covered with one-story hovels, cow sheds in which people lived. The roofs of these hovels were covered with deposits of filth, in some places a couple of feet deep. The contributions from the black windows of the second and third stores I could make out fish and meat bones, garbage, pestilence, steel rags, old boots, broken earthenware, and all the general refuse of a human sty. This is the last year of the strait. We're getting machines to do away with us, said the sweated one mournfully as we stepped over a woman with her breasts grossly naked and waded anew through the cheap young life. We next visited the municipal dwellings erected by the London County Council on the side of the slums where lived Arthur Morrison's child of a Jago. While the buildings housed more people than before, it was much healthier, but the dwellings were inhabited by the better-class workmen and artisans. The slum people had simply drifted into the crowd other slums or to form new slums. And now, said the sweated one, the earthy man who worked so fast as to dazzle one's eyes, I'll show you one of London's lungs. This is Spitalfield's garden, and he mouthed the word garden with scorn. The shadow of Christ Church falls across Spitalfield's garden. In the shadow of Christ Church, at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I saw a sight I never wish to see again. There are no flowers in this garden, which is smaller than my own rose garden at home. Grass only grows here, and it is surrounded by sharp-spiked iron fencing, as are all the parks of London town, so that homeless men and women may not come in at night and sleep upon it. As we entered the garden, an old woman between 50 and 60 passed us, striding with sturdy intention, if somewhat rigid action, with 2 bulky bundles covered with sacking slung fore and aft upon her. She was a woman trim, behoused as soul, too independent to drag her failing carcass through the workhouse door. Like the snail, she carried her home with her, and the 2 sacking-covered bundles were the household goods, her wardrobe, linen, and dear feminine possessions. We went up the narrow gravelled walk. On the benches on either side was arrayed a mass of miserable and distorted humanity, the sight of which would have impelled Dora to more diabolical fights of fancy than he ever succeeded in achieving. It was a welter of rags and filth, of all manner of loathsome skin diseases, open sores, bruises, grossness, indecency, leering monstrosities, and bestial faces. A chill, raw wind was blowing, and these creatures huddled there in their rags, sleeping for the most part, or trying to sleep. Here were a dozen women, ranging in age from 20 years to 70. Next a babe, possibly of 9 months, lying asleep, flat on the hard bench, with neither pillow nor covering, nor with anyone looking after it. Next, half a dozen men, sleeping bolt upright or leaning against one another in their sleep. In one place a family group, a child asleep, in its sleeping mother's arms, and the husband, or male maid, clumsily mending a dilapidated shoe. On another bench a woman trimming the frayed strips of her rag with a knife, and another woman, with thread and needle, sewing up rents. Adjoining, a man holding a sleeping woman in his arms. Farther on, a man, his clothing clacked with gutter mud, asleep, with head in the lap of a woman not more than 25 years old, and also asleep. It was this sleeping that puzzled me. Why were 9 of the 10 of them asleep or trying to sleep? But it was not till afterward that I learned it is a law of the powers that be that the homeless shall not sleep by night. On the pavement by the portico of Christ Church, where the stone pillars rise toward the sky in the steady row, were whole rows of men lying asleep or drowsing, and all too deep sunken in torpor to rouse or be made curious by any intrusion. The lung of London, I said, nay, an abscess, a great putresque sore. "Why did you bring me here?" demanded the burning young socialist, his delicate face white with sickness of soul and stomach sickness. "Those women there," said one guide, "will sell themselves for threepence and twopence or a loaf of stall bread." He said it with a cheerful sneer, but what more he might have said I do not know, for the sick man cried, "For heaven's sake, let us get out of this!